had a meeting today, as you know, with President Zelensky, and I would say it didn't work out exactly great from his standpoint. I think he very much overplayed his hand. We're looking for peace. We're not looking for somebody that's going to sign up a strong power and then not make peace because they feel emboldened, and that's what I saw happening. I'm looking for peace. We're not looking to go into a 10-year war and play games. We want peace. And it was just my impression that if we do that, if we sign up, he's looking for something that I'm not looking for. He's looking to go on and fight. We're looking to end the death. 2,000 people died this week. Soldiers, more than that, but 2,000 approximately people died this week. Young Ukrainians and Russians. And somebody would say, why do you care about Ukraine and Russian soldiers? I care about them. I care about everybody.
The press conference heard around the world. Today, Vladimir Zelensky landed in D.C. and he entered the White House and he had a conversation with the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and the Vice President of the United States, JD Vance, was sitting by his side. It's actually about an hour-long conversation, and shockingly, it was done in front of the press corps, or at least a huge amount of photographers and I assume reporters. It's one of the most, honestly, I think it's the most unique thing I've ever seen in geopolitics. I have never seen a foreign dignitary, much less a foreign president, sit down he's from a war-torn country. It's also a proxy war of ours, clearly. And to have this debate, which I don't think it intended to be a debate, but to have this debate in the public eye, for us to look in on it, to see how this actually plays out, it's one of the most enlightening things I've ever seen. I mean, I don't think I'm overstating it. If anybody has not seen this, you'll understand why I'm saying it. Those that have already seen this, you will absolutely agree with me, I would imagine, that this is just revelatory as to the inner workings of how foreign diplomats and presidents interact with one another. I'm not going to show the entire thing because, like I said, it's about an hour-long sit-down conversation, but the 10 minutes of disaster for Zelensky was at the end. So I just want to recap the open by explaining, and certainly you're welcome to watch the entire thing if you'd like to, but it's, for the most part, it's non-eventful for the first 45 minutes or so. And what's happening is, Trump is being very complimentary to Ukraine. He's being very amicable, even flattering at times. And Zelensky just continues to increasingly become more and more belligerent. And you can tell that his belligerence starts to wear on Trump and JD Vance. And by the end of it, there's this breaking point. And we're going to get into the breaking point in a second, but I first just want to talk a little bit about why I think this is such a... Actually, I'm going to save that. Let's do the explanation as to why this is so paradigm shifting once everybody has had an opportunity to see what transpired.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to have President Zelensky of Ukraine, and we've been working very hard, very close. So we've actually known each other for a long time. We've been dealing with each other for a long time, and very well. We had a little negotiation spat, but that worked out great. I think for both countries, I think for the world, actually, beyond both countries. And we have something that is a very fair deal. And we look forward to getting in and digging and working and getting some of the rare earth. But it means we're going to be inside, and it's a big commitment from the United States. And we appreciate working with you very much. And we will continue to do that. We have had some very good discussions with Russia. I spoke with President Putin, and we're going to try and bring this to a close. It's something that you want and that he wants. We have to negotiate a deal, but we've started the confines of a deal, and I think something can happen. The big thing is the number of soldiers, mostly at this point, but soldiers being killed. We're losing thousands of soldiers. So on both sides, we're losing a lot of soldiers, and we want to see it stop, and we want to see the money get put to different kinds of use, like rebuilding.
So as you can see, he's being very respectful. This is the opening minute. Zelensky plays nice at first. I mean, every time you've seen a foreign diplomat sit down with a president, be it Trump or Biden or Obama or anybody in the past, it's all very polite, almost scripted, it feels like. Like all of the details have already been negotiated, and this is just about getting in front of the cameras and allowing for the journalists to take photos and ask a couple questions, and everybody kisses each other's ass, and then they take a victory lap and everybody goes home. That's not what happened today, and this is the first time I've ever seen it in the public eye. And I would imagine that this does happen privately, probably on phone calls more often than in person, but it is so unique, and particularly when you contrast it between Joe Biden and the entire DNC operation that just greenlit whatever Zelensky wanted, and then you contrast it to how this plays out. It's mind-blowing. Actually, let me show you a clip of Zelensky meeting with not just Democrats, but also Republican politicians and how they treated him just a few months ago.
How you doing? Hi. Good to see you, pal.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
You look good. How's it going?
Really?
How you doing?
Yes.
Hang in there.
So it's a hero's welcome. And this is what Zelensky has dealt with for the past 2+ years. As his countrymen are on the front line getting obliterated, he has traveled the world just being treated like a returning king everywhere he goes. And that includes America. So the juxtaposition between that treatment and what happened today is profound. Let's get into it.
Now I'm talking with my friends in Poland, and they are worried that you align yourself too much with Putin. What's your message for them?
Well, if I didn't align myself with both of them, you'd never have a deal. You want me to say really terrible things about Putin and then say, "Hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal?" That doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America and for the good of the world. I'm aligned with the world, and I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred, and I understand that, but I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe.
I want you to, for those that are watching and not listening, I want you to watch Zelensky's mannerisms throughout this. I mean, he comes across as if he's yacked out of his mind. Maybe it's just nerves, maybe, but the facial tics, the hand movements, how he's just constantly fiddling with his fingers, and he just looks on edge. And then the facial twitches in particular and the constant sniffling. You can guess as to what I think is going on with this guy.
I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. But you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
Hey, I want to respond to this. So look.
I just got to point this out. So they have been talking for 50 minutes, and they've gotten through it. Zelensky hasn't flipped out. Nothing crazy has happened. And Trump says, one more question. So he just needed to get through one more question, and they would have signed this mineral rights deal to get additional aid from the U.S. and to negotiate a peace deal with Russia. Like, it was that close. And then JD Vance decides to speak, and apparently Zelensky didn't like the idea of the vice president having any say-so.
For 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the president of the United States' words mattered more than the president of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Just before you see Zelensky's reaction, did you find anything off-putting about what JD Vance said there? I mean, if anything, he's being insulting towards Joe Biden. Like, clearly. There's no slight or shade thrown, even slightly, at Zelensky in what JD Vance said. But Zelensky took serious umbrage to it, and he just may have ruined his country, his political life, his career, everything.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now the President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact line?
2015.
2014.
2014 and 2014.
2014?
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
That's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed with him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are
Mr.
not
President,
strong-
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for
Have you
trying to
ever
bring an
been-
end to this
Have you
conflict.
ever been
It's already getting spicy. You can see it escalating. It was all hunky-dory. And then apparently Zelensky takes umbrage at the fact that JD Vance points out that there are big chunks of Ukraine that have been destroyed. And he talks about how wanting to utilize diplomacy. And Zelensky apparently finds that insulting, saying, where was the diplomacy back in 2014? Which is bizarre because how could you possibly expect JD Vance, who I don't even think was in politics at that time. Maybe he was a senator by then, I'm not sure. But or Trump, who certainly wasn't in power or even in politics either. It's just strange. It's a strange thing to get bothered by. But it escalates very rapidly from here. And might I add, well, Zelensky is, more than happy to talk about 2014 and Russia's taking over Crimea. He doesn't mention what transpired immediately, like the same exact time almost, is well, first off, the Maidan Revolution. He doesn't talk about that, or the State Department involvement in overthrowing his predecessor. But he also doesn't talk about the bombing campaign on the Donbass. Well, why was that happening, Vlad? You want to explain that one? No. Let's just make this as lopsided as possible.
to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Count one.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's
I
respectful
will answer.
to come to the Oval Office
I
of
will
the United
answer.
States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all,
I got to interject one more time here. What I find fascinating about this is that Trump is letting this cook. You would think Mike Pence, for instance, or flashback to Barack Obama. Did he let Joe Biden interject during meetings like this? Not that I ever saw, that's for sure. And JD is being quite antagonistic in response to Zelensky's antagonism to begin this all off. But the fact that Trump allows him to do so, I think speaks volumes about his opinion of JD Vance, of his relationship with him, that he doesn't interject. You've seen Trump when someone else tries to speak up and he disagrees, he'll be the first to throw a hand up and talk over them. Trump sits there quietly and he lets JD Vance just cook this dude. And it gets wilder from here.
during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't know
God
that.
bless. You will
Don't-
not have
gotta-
a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not.
And this is where he really crossed the line with Trump, because the insinuation there is quite clear. He's saying, because you have these big, beautiful oceans, you don't have to deal with war. But the implication being that if you don't stop Vladimir Putin, that war may come for you next, which is obviously absurd. Russia is not going to conquer all of Europe and then come across the Atlantic and invade the United States. It's just laughable. But Trump gets fiery here.
Telling you,
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on this
position to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly what
this.
you're doing.
I'm not
You're
dictating.
in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
You
We're
will-
going to feel very
you will
good.
Feel influenced.
We're going to feel very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the
bad
very
position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right about
From the
it.
very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a
Brown,
good position.
I
You
was
don't have
in
the
a-
cards right now. With us, you start
I'm
having
not playing
cards. But
cards.
right now, you
I'm
don't.
very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War
do you-
III.
what do you think
You're
about?
gambling with
What do you
World
think
War
about?
III. And
You-
what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country.
I'm-
That's
with
back
all
to
respect to
you.
your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you?
Man, that's about as heated as I've ever seen Trump get, other than on The Apprentice or something. Like, he is clearly bothered, like deeply, deeply bothered. And I get it. What is happening here? Like, the entire, you got to keep in mind too, it's like Trump wasn't responsible for Maidan. He wasn't even in American politics at the time. So yes, you can say that the United States government is culpable in the overthrow and ultimately the antagonism that led to the war with Russia, but the invasion by Russia, the participation that Trump has in this is like, yeah, he sent them munitions in, I think it was 2018, and he bragged about it. He said, Obama would only send them blankets. I sent them bombs. So he owns a very small fraction of the antagonism, but more specifically, like, this is on Obama and Biden. Biden was the vice president of the United States and the head envoy to Ukraine. Obviously, Obama oversaw the State Department. Hillary Clinton was obviously involved. Victoria Nuland. This is the Democrat Party. This is their war. This is their proxy war. They started it. They funded it. They loved it all the way along. Yes, some of the neocons in the Republican Party, like Lindsey Graham and others, certainly John McCain, played their part. But like, you can't put this at the feet of Trump, at least not primarily. Certainly not. So it's just fascinating that Zelensky is still talking to him as if like this is kind of your bad, and moreover, he just comes across as extraordinarily unappreciative. And JD Vance asks him that in the following segment here. He says, "Have you ever said thank you?" And I think that's what most Americans, those that aren't even non-interventionists like myself, that are just pissed that this guy just seems so entitled. That you come across the ocean, you land here, you put your hand out, you bitch, you moan, you threaten, you complain, and then you expect more. Like, where's the thanks for the $200 billion we've already given you? How about the $200 billion that you got from the EU? Like, any appreciation for any of this? Did we have to do it? Like, maybe you can argue that the Barack Obama administration or the Joe Biden administration has blood on their hands and they deserve to pay the price alongside you. But the American taxpayer, the fuck did we do? We didn't do anything. And we have been robbed to the tune of $200 billion. According to Trump, it's $350 billion. I don't know where he gets that number. I think it's approximately like $190 billion, actually, to be exact. But regardless, like, why are we on the hook? What the fuck did we do? Nothing. Like, we did nothing. I had no culpability in this whatsoever. But you just had this unbelievable sense of entitlement. And I think it just grates on people. And most politicians in the West just accept it because I don't know why. They've drank their own Kool-Aid and they genuinely perceive this man to be a, hero riding in on a white steed. But for the rest of us, like, you're a fucking comic who used to do, like, play the piano with your dick and did talent shows. Why do I respect? I don't have any fucking respect for you. You haven't been on the front line. You haven't been fighting. I've got plenty of respect for the soldiers of Ukraine and the soldiers of Russia, but I don't have any fucking respect for Vladimir Zelensky. And why should I? I've been robbed massively to support you. And then you come over here and you fucking lecture the President of the United States, who didn't even have anything to do with really, like, sparking this whole thing. Come on. It's ridiculous. But I think what's most special about this, Biden, Obama, Keir Starmer, any Western politician outside of maybe Trump and JD Vance and maybe Vivek Ramaswamy, if he ever gets to that high level, they're all lifetime politicians. Like, none of them have been in the business world. They've never had to earn an honest buck. They don't know how to negotiate anything. They're just, like, to their core, politicians. That's it. That's their entire skill set. They know how to smile and nod and let their underlings do the dirty work. Trump ain't that guy. Yeah, sure, he's a trust fund kid and he got a bunch of money from his father, but it doesn't matter. Like, he still went out and endeavored to create an enterprise, tons of different enterprises, and negotiated tons of different deals and was successful in most of those endeavors. He's got a real background in business. Like, it's crystal clear to me as a former business guy myself. He's negotiating in real time in a real way. But what's most special about it is because of his business acumen as opposed to the statist acumen of all of his predecessors. He points out what no other American politician I've ever seen pointed out. He says, you don't have the cards. You don't have leverage. That's really what he's saying. He puts it in, poker terminology, and it's very analogous to business negotiations anyways. Like, when you sit down at a poker table or you sit down at a business round table to negotiate, you have to know what leverage you have. What are you bringing to the table? Because if you sit down with a weak hand or nothing to add to the negotiations, well, then you better fucking play nice. You better find some way through charisma or otherwise to convince people to go along with you. But if you sit down with a weak hand, if you limp in with 7-deuce offsuit, well, you better be prepared to either eat shit or bluff. And I think what Zelensky has been doing for the past 2-3 years is bluffing. And every other politician who's never been in business bought the bluff. Keep in mind, Zelensky's an actor. He's an actor and a comic and a musician or whatever, dancing. His skill set is putting on a show. Trump's skill set is the same, actually, but also with a business acumen. So when Zelensky sits down with 7-deuce offsuit and Trump's sitting there with, rockets, with aces, and he's like, what are you doing, bud? You don't have the cards. Just fold. Just accept that you're going to accept my dictation of the terms here. That's how it's going down. You can accept it and be happy, or you can flip out and maybe I won't even fucking settle, And I think that's more than anything what makes this moment so special, is that for the first time, we actually have a president of the United States who's acknowledging the strength of our hand as a nation. That, yes, all of our pitfalls, and they are plentiful, like unbelievable pitfalls, especially when it comes to our foreign policy. But it doesn't change the fact that in negotiations in geopolitics, we have the strongest hand. We have the strongest economy. We have the strongest military. To many regards, we still have the strongest currency, as absurd as that is. You're negotiating from a position of strength. Why has every president prior to Donald Trump negotiated from a position of weakness? You can come up with your own theories as to why. I don't know. But I can't tell you how refreshing it is to have a president sit down and acknowledge the position of strength that he's negotiating from. And more importantly than even negotiating from a position of strength, doing it with the moral principles that reflect the American people's principles of wanting peace, to see the death stop. So special. So novel when it shouldn't be. When this should have always been the case. That you should have always had a president of the United States that says, you know what? Yeah, we're in a position of immense power, but we're not going to abuse it. We're going to negotiate for good. We're going to negotiate for peace, to stop World War III, to stop the dying, to stop the death. Why shouldn't we? We have that capacity. And we do. And we always have. But we've never used it for good, or very rarely. And for the record, I would rather us not be involved in negotiating peace between Russia and Ukraine. They should figure it out on their own. But let's be honest. We're not in that position, so let's just deal with where we're at. This is our proxy war. Yes, the United States president is going to have to be involved in negotiating a settlement here to avoid a wider war. So accepting that reality, I think Trump is doing a phenomenal job in a moment that requires it. It required someone who has a skill set exactly in alignment with his own.
A
This
lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting, have
today.
you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of
you're
America
speaking about.
and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not
Yeah.
speaking loudly. Your country is
Can I-
in big
can-
trouble.
can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No,
Can
you've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not
I
winning.
know.
You're not winning this.
I...
You have a damn
We-
good chance of
we are
coming out
staying,
okay because of
Mr.
us.
President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this
We
cabinet.
gave you, through
I
this
said thank
stupid
you.
president, $350 billion.
You voted
We gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment.
You
And your
voted
men
for
are
your
brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
If-
West
If
Africa?
you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me-
equipment,
you invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3
okay?
days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this, I
Again,
tell
you
you.
just say thank you.
I said a lot of times thank you to American people.
Accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's
I
very
understand.
important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there.
I'm-
Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running
I
low
know.
on soldiers.
Don't-
Listen,
don't please,
you're running
Mr.
low on
President.
soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then
President.
then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But
I
saying
said-
you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't
doesn't
with
matter
me.
for you what-
That
what
wasn't
this
with me.
means. It
That was
wasn't
with
with you.
a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person.
This
That
is
was
your-
with,
this
that was
is
with
your
Obama.
president. It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
The other thing I like about it is, Dave Smith has talked about this too. He says, this is Trump's gangster, like this is his gangster side. And he has been moving more like a gangster. And, granted, yeah, gangsters can do some bad shit too. So it's not a green light to him to just do whatever he wants in gangster mode. But I do like it, especially when you're representing the American people, or at least that's theoretically what a president is supposed to have been doing, but never has. He sits down and he flexes, and he's negotiating in a gangster way, in the sense that, like, he understands that he has immense leverage, and he's essentially like playing mercy with him, and he has his hands turned over backwards during that conversation. He's like, "What are you doing? Like, it's over. Just say mercy. Just say mercy. And how about you say thank you while you're at it?" And Zelensky, high out of his mind, as best I can tell, is just having none of it. Like, he ain't going to do it. And it backfires tremendously. And I think that the key point in that segment is that he says, it's going to be really hard to do business with a guy like this. And I think that's exactly right. In fact, they threw Zelensky out. They were supposed to sign this mineral rights deal as soon as this press conference was over. And for anybody that thinks that this was like a stage performance or anything, I confirmed with other reporters there that they, in fact, had the documents drafted. Like, they had the documents drafted, ready to be signed. They had negotiated it all. It was a done deal. Like, it was a done deal. This was literally just a photo op combo, and then it was going to get signed, and they were on their way. And it didn't happen like that. As always, Liberty Lockdown is brought to you by mypillow.com/lockdown. Go to mypillow.com/lockdown. Get yourself the Giza sheets, homeboy. Slip into some satin. Get yourself some clothes. They got clothes over my pillow. My goodness. They got robes. They got slippers. They got pet stuff. They got coffee. Look, this is like basically Amazon. Get rid of Amazon. sign up for mypillow.com/lockdown. If you want to support the show, easiest way to do so, mypillow.com/lockdown. Buy you some cozy. Minutes after this showdown and this explosion, Zelensky is thrown, literally, I mean, not physically, but literally thrown out. Like they said, get the fuck out of here. And immediately the envoys to Ukraine reach out to the White House envoys and they're like, hey, we need to salvage this. How can we salvage this? And apparently Marco Rubio and Hegseth and someone else tells them, I think it was Walls, the CIA director, says, look, any further conversations today will be counterproductive. Call us tomorrow. They're like, we're not dealing with you today. You fucked up so bad. We're not having further conversations today. I'm glad that they kept the door open to have a conversation because obviously I still want to see them negotiate peace. But man, did this guy fuck up. It's just amazing, the entitlement. 2.5 years of just getting whatever you want. 3 years now of just getting whatever you want. And you thought it was the same old boss. And it sure as shit wasn't. And again, I got to just circle back to JD Vance. Very impressed. Very impressed. I mean, most second in commands, most vice presidents, they just would sit there, they bite their tongue. They would probably be the one trying to calm down Trump. Like in this regard, it was really Vance that was firing the hardest. And then Trump was interjecting in his defense when Zelensky was saying some nonsense in return to Vance. And Trump was like, hold on. He's not yelling. He's not yelling. He's just saying shit that you don't want to hear. This is crazy. I mean, can you guys believe this? Have you ever seen anything like this in politics? Like other than like in the UK, in the parliament when they'll, clown on each other and you'll have oohs and ahs in the audience. Like this is a rare, in American politics, we don't ever see stuff like this. Like hardly ever. Certainly not between an American president and a foreign president. Wow. All right, let's keep going.
Because the attitudes have to change.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks peace talks? What do you do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you saying?
What?
Sorry, it's kind of quiet, but the reporter is asking, well, what do you do if Russia breaks the ceasefire? Which, by the way, the means to the best of my knowledge, was actually broken, which is what Zelensky brought up in the early parts of this, was actually broken by Ukraine when they bombed the Donbass, continued to bomb it. So I don't even know what he's arguing. It's nuts.
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. It came out of Hunter Biden's bedroom. It was disgusting. And then they said, oh, the laptop from hell was made by Russia. The 51 agents. The whole thing was a scam. And he had to put up with that. He was being accused of all that stuff. All I can say is this. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with Biden. He did, maybe. Maybe he didn't. I don't know what happened. But he didn't break them with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is, I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out.
This is so wild. You'll either make a deal or we're out. And you'll fight it out. Oh, God. This is glorious. This is absolutely glorious. I'm loving it every minute. All right, let's keep going.
I think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing.
See what I'm saying with the mob boss? I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. It's just not, it's like when a guy says, fuck your mother, and you're like, I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. What you're doing here is not nice. I don't like it, capiche? I don't like it, all right? Man, I love it. I don't know if it's just because I was raised by a New Yorker that I love the New York energy, but this is very New York energy.
All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? Huh? This is going to be great television, I will say that. All right, we'll see what we can do about putting it together.
If you think this is performative or I'm overstating how badly this went for Zelensky, check this out.
Yeah, I just went up to the press area to get an understanding of what we're watching. This is what I was told. The president has kicked Zelensky out of the White House. His delegation right now is telling him that he's got to go home. The president felt disrespected. Officials in the room felt that beyond the language barrier that we've heard some discussion about, Zelensky's body language, shrugging and eye rolling, was ungrateful, disrespectful, and the president feels that Zelensky is not ready for peace, and he can come back when he's ready to talk about peace, but he's not in that position right now, and Zelensky is being told he's got to go. The lunch that they were supposed to have is sitting right outside the hallway, and the press staffers are going to be eating that lunch.
They had a lunch planned with Zelensky immediately after that press conference, and now the press corps gets to eat it because he doesn't get to have lunch with them either. Oh my goodness, this is so wild, so wild. So that's more or less the story. That's what happened today. Does it make up for AG Pambondi's failures yesterday with the incredibly embarrassing Epstein disclosures? No, it does not. It does not make up for that. But I will say this. That's the type of stuff I voted for. That's exactly what I wanted. I mean, I can't imagine any other time. Like, yeah, sure. I don't, just to all cards on the table. I don't like the fact that this was still, I mean, what he was doing there was trying to get Zelensky to sign the mineral rights deal to get our $350 billion back via rare earth minerals. The fact that he said just yesterday, and I played this for you guys, he said, well, this allows them to continue to fight. And it's like, that's not what I want, even though I would love to get our money back. I don't want this war to continue, and I'd be willing to just write off the loss if it means that the war just ends flat right now. But still, even with that, even with all of my, caution in that arena, it's just, this is exactly what we need. We need, like, if you're going to have a president, wouldn't you like them to be someone who actually seems to be interested in what benefits America? Right? Like, why is this so rare? Why has this never happened before? All of the presidents of my lifetime, just dog shit, just absolutely atrocious. And Trump's got plenty of, black eyes, like plenty. But compared to the rest, such an upgrade. And I'm just so grateful to have, some representatives up there that seem to be first primary interest being peace. That's what I really am about here. But then also, like, what makes us solvent? Where's the benefit? If we're going to be participating in this nonsense, can we at least come out with some positives for the American people? Ever? Right? Like, no. Trump seems to genuinely believe that, like, oh yeah, hey, all those other guys that were the president before me that weren't actually functioning in any sort of executive capacity. I am actually that guy. Like, I'm actually going to run shit here. And it's remarkable, the contrast between this go around, he's only 5 weeks in, and his first term, where it's just not the same guy. I mean, his behavior is so 180 degrees different. Like, if you remember him in the first presidential term, he talked a lot of shit to the media, but when it came to sitting down with, Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi or whoever, he's like, we're getting along. It'd be great to work across the aisle. Like, he really went in the first time naive as all get out. And he was just like, yeah, we're going to be able to work with the Democrats. We're going to be able to work with the swamp monster GOP. And this go around, he's like, oh, no. You can't work with any of those people. You have to do everything that you can via executive order and then use whatever leverage you have to force their hand to do the rest of it via congressional actions. Like, he gets it now. And he's like, oh, am I going to put in someone that Mike Pompeo recommended? or Bill Barr, like, no. I'm going with fucking Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and RFK Jr. Like he's just really learned the game a little bit, a lot of it. And I think that the proof is in the pudding. Like what the outcomes from his first 5 weeks demonstrate that he really does understand it on a much deeper level. I do want to talk briefly about the Epstein situation. Let's see this. Tucker Carlson doing what he does best, tell the truth about the Epstein case.
Bottom line is Jeffrey Epstein was murdered, and not only murdered, but he was murdered in the most secure federal lockup in Midtown Manhattan, in the country. Okay, not just in federal lockup, but in the most secure part of federal lockup. So how did that happen? Well, he was clearly murdered by another inmate. You can't get any answers to who the other 8 inmates on his block were. There was no investigation into his death. They've never released it. And the Attorney General at the time, Attorney General Barr, clearly knew that this happened. And I've said that in public, and he's attacked me for saying that, but it's just a fact. He lied about it. And so what is that? What is that? Think about that for a minute. And I don't know there's a lot I don't know. I don't pretend to understand really anything. I don't understand anything. But I know lying when I see it, and they're lying about Jeffrey Epstein. And if they're not, where's the investigation? And there hasn't been one. And so that's pretty heavy duty. Where are the tapes? Where are the Epstein tapes? It was so funny. They released a tape, a guy I know actually released a tape of Jeffrey Epstein talking about Donald Trump and saying we were friends once and I don't like Trump. And okay, this was like the October surprise was to derail Trump. And everyone's, how can you do that? And I thought, I'm so glad they're doing that. So let's talk about Jeffrey Epstein. Like where are the videotapes from his home in New Mexico, from his Caribbean island, from his place on Fifth Avenue? There are all these videotapes now, in federal hands. Why can't we see those? And we can't see them, of course, because there's like a massive blackmail operation run by various intel agencies designed to put famous people under the control of governments. I mean, of course, that's what it was, obviously, and everyone knows that, but no one can say anything about it. And as a friend of mine said, we were talking about this one night, and he goes, I'm kind of, if you think about it, like if you're able to kill somebody in the secure block in federal lockup in Manhattan and get away with it, probably not someone you want to dick around with. Like that's a powerful force, and that's a fair point, but it's still worth saying out loud because it's worth living in a transparent, honest country. It's bad to have rot like that. It's bad to have crimes like that committed in front of our faces. We can't do anything about it. It makes everyone feel impotent. It makes everyone paranoid. It makes everyone feel like nothing's on the level. We wind up with a society where no one believes anything. And I feel like that's where we are. The number of people I know who are like, wow, I've become a really deranged conspiracy theorist who doesn't believe in the moon landing. I must know 100 people who said that to me in the last 2 years. And trust me, if you don't feel that way, you're just not admitting it. Because you do feel that way if you're paying attention. And that's a bad way to feel. You don't want a country like that. You want a country where things are pretty much what they seem to be, where people are honest, they're straightforward. When they make a terrible mistake, they admit it. You want a country that is like the family that you have or want to have, where people are just direct with each other and kind to each other, and not everything is some crazy multi-layered deception designed to, screw you or kill Jeffrey Epstein. Like that's so dark.
And I know a lot of people think that I've jumped to conclusions on the Epstein case. I mean, most of you agree with me, but some of you think that I've jumped to conclusions. Look, it was Alex Acosta, the U.S. attorney, or Florida attorney general, I think. Maybe it wasn't the attorney general. Anyways, he was an attorney out of Florida, and he was prosecuting the Epstein case. And he was told, according to him, that he needed to let it go because, quote, Epstein was attached to intelligence. Now, does Acosta know which intelligence agencies? I bet he does. Do I know which? No, I don't. He didn't say. But the fact that he was involved in the prosecution of Epstein back in the 2000s and was told to back off because he was essentially an FBI informant, which there's other documentation that say that. I think that Tucker and I and most people are making the proper assessment that, yeah, that's what he was. He was attached to the FBI and probably other intel agencies, particularly given his clientele, Prince Andrew and all these other people. It's like, you think that was just FBI operation? I kind of doubt it. Kind of doubt it. What about his partner, Ghislaine Maxwell? Who was her father? Oh, Robert Maxwell. So I can't possibly assume that we already know pretty factually that he was actually an FBI asset, that he's probably an asset for Mossad too? Like, can we connect that dot, or am I going too far? Come on. Like, I have to connect dots because I don't know factually, but like, these are obvious dots to connect. Pretty fucking obvious. So I'm just very appreciative of Tucker Carlson for being willing to tell what I think is some obvious truths or some obvious, questions that need to be asked. And I think this is why there was such outrage at Pam Bondi yesterday and today. And this story kind of got buried as a consequence of the Trump, Vance versus Zelensky moment, the showdown. But I just want to kind of recap why I think people are so passionate about this and why they're so angry with Bondi. Well, first off, it's a new guard. Like, our expectations is that you guys ran on day one disclosures. Kash Patel in particular said that repeatedly. I think Bondi said she would release it, very early on. And it's not day one, and it's not disclosures. And you decided to put it into a binder with 98% of it, which was already public knowledge, and most of the stuff that was already in the public domain was actually redacted even more than what most of us have already seen. So like, it was less information than we already have. So you gave us negative new information approximately. You put it into a binder, and you don't even give it to the public. You don't put it online. You don't just release the entire treasure trove of documents. You hand it over to a bunch of conservative influencers for them to then peddle it to their followers and to, I guess, soft sell it as like, this is great. And on top of that, you then have many of these influencers put out almost verbatim posts announcing it. And one of the main things they say is most transparent administration in American history, or most transparent White House, or I forget, exactly what it was, but almost all of them, or not almost all of them, many of them say it similarly, and two of them said it like almost verbatim, like 2 words off in multiple paragraphs. It looked terrible. It looked terrible. And I know many of these influencers. I've met like half of them. Some of them I even would consider friends, and there's no ill will. I'm just saying, if you're trying to represent yourself as a turning over a new leaf, as this is the most transparent White House in American history. Well, the way you do that is you actually be transparent. I know, crazy. You're not going to be able to just have influencers convince us of that. Like, the whole reason that the MAGA Maha Libertarian Alliance exists is because we don't trust any of you fucking people. And just because many of us voted for you does not mean that we trust you. Quite the contrary. We do not. We trust your actions when your actions align with your words and your words align with our values. And if you can do that, then yes, you will continue to build trust with us. But there is no trust as of now. And the reason that people are so upset is, well, first off, the Epstein case is atrocious. It's one of the worst things most people have ever heard of. Most people thought it was a conspiracy theory, even though there was already proof that it was true. If you were to bring it up 5-10 years ago, people thought you were nuts because they were like, that's so horrific. There's no way that's true. So most people have already bridged that divide. They've already gone over the chasm to the point of like, oh my God, this did happen. Holy shit. And now they're in the position of thinking, oh my God, this did happen, and only Epstein and Maxwell were held to account? What the fuck? And then on top of that, you have the guy getting whacked, it looks like, in a top security prison in New York. And no one cares. And there's no investigation. And you're just supposed to be cool with that? You have Ghislaine Maxwell on the hook, which she only got 20 years, by the way, which seems extraordinarily low. But you don't use her as leverage, as, negotiate her testifying against her clientele, her funding sources, all of the billionaires that she was working with or for, the intel agencies. No, you don't. Now, why don't you? Well, I think because she was doing work for you guys, and you probably just threatened her to get her to shut up. You have a pretty imminent threat that you can demonstrate to her. Look what happened to your buddy Epstein. So all of this, and you have this new presidential cabinet come in, all of them making extraordinary promises when it comes to these disclosures, and we get nothing, and it's handled terribly. And I know much of it was accidentally handled terribly because the influencers didn't even know they were going to get these binders. So I'm not really trying to dunk on the influencer side of this thing. I'm more trying to dunk on the Bondi and Patel's side of this thing, because y'all made the promises. Bondi, the night before, actually went on Jesse Waters' show on Fox News and said, yeah, what he did was atrocious, and we've got a bunch of the documents, and we're going to be releasing them tomorrow. It's been on my desk for a week, and yada, yada, yada. And then the next day, you hand these binders out to these influencers while simultaneously writing a letter to Kash Patel saying, hey, it's the Southern District of New York FBI office has withheld thousands of documents from the Epstein case. So when you were on with Waters, you either lied or you spoke out of ignorance that, in fact, you did not have the information. So my best case scenario at this point is that essentially you just were talking out of your ass, that you probably had an underling that was handling this, and you realized too late that you didn't have the, like, there was no fireworks in this thing. There was no actual disclosures. But more than anything, and I think most people that are in this, in my camp feel the same way, is that I'm not really worried about the disclosures, and I'm not really significantly worried about the timelines of this disclosures. What I'm most worried about is that where is the fucking handcuffs, Pam? So if what you're telling me is true, which, as I said, I'm going to try and give you the benefit of the doubt and say, maybe it is. Maybe the Southern District of New York FBI office did withhold thousands of Epstein documents despite the fact that you ordered them to be delivered to you. Then why, in God's name, did you not seize their building this morning? Instead, you write a letter saying you have until 8 a.m. to give me these documents. From what I've heard so far, didn't happen today. So they called your bluff. And what'd you do as a consequence, or what'd you do as a response? Nothing that I've seen. I've seen no response at all. I actually went online and asked people about it, and everyone's telling me the same thing. They don't know what the fuck happened. There's nothing. So you gave them a deadline. The deadline passed. You should have had SWAT team or U.S. Marshals or somebody ready to go in there and seize these documents, seize their servers, seize everything, arrest the people that are obstructing justice. You do nothing. You did nothing today. But then I'm seeing reports, AG Bondi, furious with Southern District of New York FBI field office for not delivering the documents that she required. Well, where's the fury, Pam? So, as I said, I'm trying to trust you. I'm trying to build trust here. But your actions aren't meeting your words. And as long as that's the case, the trust is going like that. Pew. It's dropping. You want my trust to build? You gotta actually have your actions match your words. It's very simple. And I think that's how most people feel. And I'll keep an open mind. I'm a very forgiving person. But if I don't see perp walks of some of the billionaires that were clients, of some of the billionaires that were actually funding his operation, of some of the, probably the police or FBI agents that were handling his cases that dropped them, maybe the heads of the FBI prior to your tenure that were instructing them to drop these cases when it has to do with child trafficking, you have to hold your own accountable. Like, the rich, the powerful have to be held to account. If you want us to believe in the justice system in America, that's the only pathway forward. And if you don't do that, then don't expect us to trust you at all, and you don't deserve to be trusted either. And I will make no apologies for that. We're talking about massive trafficking of kids. It gets no worse than that. I think it's the least we can ask for, is that you actually prosecute these people. So take your time. Take your time. It's been over decades that this information has been in the hands of the FBI, just so you know. Like, they've had prosecutions all the way back to 2006. So fucking almost 20 years now. So it's not as if, like, the clock started ticking recently. It's been ticking for 20 fucking years. So I'll allow it to tick a little bit longer. But when that bell goes off, I better hear some handcuffs clinking. And if I don't, well, then you should resign. And honestly, after you didn't seize the FBI field office in Southern District of New York today, you probably ought to resign anyways. But I'll give you one more week. One more week before I totally lose my mind. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Let me know if you disagree with anything I said. And if you agreed, you could let me know that too. As I continue to remind you guys, pick up your cousins' phones when you're at, I don't know, Easter, and just pick up their podcatcher and go to Liberty Lockdown and click subscribe, auto update, hand them their phone back, and don't say a fucking thing about what you just did. And then when they call you up and they go, what the fuck did you do to my phone? Say, deal with it. Just say it like that. Such a stupid marketing tactic, but I think it might work. You guys could help. All right. See you soon. Peace.
Why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest level in this country's office, and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see if do you own a suit?
Yeah, problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not respecting.
I don't have
the
such.
office.
I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
Okay.
Yes, maybe one.
Maybe something like this.
Yours.
Sir.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Maybe something better. I don't know. We will see. Maybe something cheaper than. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for.
Welcome to Liberty Lockdown. Please scan your barcode. Your liberty ain't gone, but yeah, it's on hold. Where did it come from and where did it go?